This next strategy or competency that we're going to address is referred to as the percent profit or loss. Now, in this particular case, given the fact that it's called the percent profit or loss, it may help you understand that what you're looking for is the percentage in this particular case. So let me take you back to your T-bar. I do think this is another one that the T-bar works out very well for. Knowing that on the T-bar that the rate or percent goes down here, we're already partway through this problem because what we're looking at is that variable. Now all we need to know is the profit or loss. The problem resolves the same regardless of whether you're dealing with profit or loss. And oftentimes over here in the whole, what you're going to be looking for is the original investment. Okay? So let's say, for example, that someone purchased a property for, let's say $180,000. Okay, so that was their original investment. Now keep in mind, I'm just making this up. During the time that they owned that property, they sold it for 198, or when they sold the property, they sold it for 198. Okay, that's what they sold it for. They bought it for 180. So if you buy something for $180,000 and you sell it for 198, then your profit was $18,000. Well, in this particular question, the question is not what was your actual profit, it was what was your percent of profit. And I don't want you to overthink that. Once you get these numbers, I just want you to do the basic function that we normally do. We have one number above and one number below the T-bar. We're going to divide. And 18,000 divided by $180,000 is simply going to be 10%. Now, here's what I mean by overthinking it. Some people will say, well, how long did they have the property? How long, what was their mortgage? How much did they pay down? Blah, blah, blah. That's not this question. So if you don't mind, don't overthink it. You bought it for 180, you sold it for 198, you made $18,000 off this property. What's the relationship between the profit, 18,000, and what you originally paid, $180,000? Okay, we'll do some questions on this. Okay, let's take a look at this question, recognizing that it's a percent profit or loss question. So we start off by reading, a seller sold a property for $250,000. The house had originally been purchased for $180,000. What was the seller's percent of profit on this sale? Okay, it looks like it's pretty straightforward, and let's treat it as if it's straightforward, and I think it'll be fairly representative of what you'll see on the exam. So what you have in this case is you have the relationship between the profit or loss, but in this case, it's obvious it was a profit. He sold it for more than he bought it for. And the original investment, the relationship between the profit and the original investment. And we know, of course, that what we're looking for is the percent. So now let's just start plugging things in and hope good things happen. So if you sold it for $250, after having bought it for $180, would we all agree that our actual profit was $70,000? Okay, so there's your profit. Remember, just very basic math here. Don't worry about how long it was. Don't worry about, what his interest rate and stuff like that. He sold it for $250. He bought it for $180. It's a $70,000 profit. Be careful here because what we're looking for is the original investment. His original investment was $180,000. You might have already figured out that one of the most common mistakes is people just grab the wrong number and they divide it by the sale price instead of what he originally purchased it for. If you run that calculation, what you will see is that comes out to be 39%. In your calculator, there's no doubt that it said 0.39. But remember, to convert a decimal to a percentage, you just move it 2 spaces to the right and add the percent sign. Some people say you multiply the decimal times 100 and it'll take care of moving it 2 spaces to the right for you, okay? The reason I mention that to you is look at your answers over here. Obviously, at this point, you know that D is in fact the answers, 39%. But notice what A and B say. They're just trying to get people that struggle in math to get unconfident and say, wow, 39%, that sounds like a big profit. So it can't be that much. Maybe it's only 3.9. So don't fall for the tricks. Make sure you follow the math, trust your calculator, and then understand how these numbers relate to each other. Clearly 70 is greater than a third of 180. And so therefore you might know that this is going to be certainly a double digit number. 39% is the answer on that one. I don't necessarily like to go negative with my questions, but having said that, take a look at this question. During a recent downturn in the economy, a seller sold a property for $125,000 that had been purchased 3 years earlier for $150,000. What was the seller's percent of profit or loss? So notice in this case, it's the same problem that we talked about, but instead of having the profit, we have a loss. But the formula is still going to be the same. It's the relationship between that loss and your original investment. So we know we're looking for percentage, so we just add that there. So let's take a look at the property. He bought it for 150 3 years earlier. 3 years earlier, hopefully I've convinced you, doesn't really matter in these questions. He later sold it for 125. So would you agree that the difference between those numbers is $25,000? And in this case, if you sell something for less than you bought it for, then clearly you sold it at a loss. So I'm going to put the loss of $25,000 here. And then be careful here. A lot of people accidentally grab the wrong number as the original investment. Notice in this case, he bought the property for $150,000. So 25,000, follow the rule of the T-bar. On the top, $150,000. On the bottom, I'm going to run it through my calculator here. Let's see, what do we have? 25,000 divided by 150. And my calculator says 0.1 and then repeating sixes. 0.1, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to turn that into a percentage, and we're going to round it to 2 digits here. So in this case, based on the answers that we have, 17% is going to be the most likely answer on this, and that is in fact correct on this problem.